Here's what's happening. Earlier this year, you know who signed an executive order directing the Smithsonian to purge quote unquote improper ideology from museums, education centers, and even the National Zoo. It also calls for restoring monuments removed since 2020, citing a quote unquote false reconstruction of history. In August, the White House ordered 8 major museums to submit exhibits, materials, and social media for review within 30 days, with 120 days to implement tone corrections, emphasizing American exceptionalism. Here's what you know who said about the Oval Office, said from the Oval Office about his comprehensive review of the Smithsonian. Watch and listen to this clip.
Well, we want the museums to treat our country fairly. We want the museums to talk about the history of our country in a fair manner, not in a woke manner or in a racist manner, which is what many of them, not all of them, but many of them are doing. Our museums have an obligation to represent what happened in our country over the years, good and bad, but what happened over the years in an accurate way.
Well, let me tell you something here about this, because, you know, obviously what he's trying to do is erase African American history, and I don't like what he's doing to the museums, because obviously he wants the museums to be in his vision, because he's obviously just a crybaby and only thinking about himself here only. But let me just bring up something here so that way you understand here, okay? The misrepresentation of museum content here, okay? Let me tell you more about it. The Smithsonian Institute comprises 21 museums, 21 libraries, 14 research centers, and a National Zoo. While it addresses topics like slavery, it also showcases American achievements, innovation, and patriotism. For instance, the National Museum of African American History and Culture highlights Black Americans' resilience and success, featuring exhibits on notable figures such as Chuck Berry, Whitney Houston, and Ben Carson. I don't know why. Well, Ben Carson is African American, but I'm not sure why. Well, I'm not going to say much on Ben Carson, because obviously he did not do good as Housing and Urban Development Secretary under you know whose first administration here. But, however, the National Museum of African American History displays artifacts like the Bar's battle-scarred flag, that inspired the Star-Spangled Banner, and a statue of George Washington. Now, it could be George Washington, the first president of the United States, or it could be George Washington Carver. It doesn't say specifically, it just says George Washington here. But the National Air and Space Museum celebrates American technological advancements with exhibits on the Wright brothers airplane and the Spirit of St. Louis here. So, and a little public perception, the National Museum of African American History and Culture was among the top 5 most visited Smithsonian museums visited in 2024, indicating public interest in diverse exhibits. So this is the thing you need to be mindful of here. People are coming to learn more about African American history here and what it was all about here back in the old days here. All right. And what this guy in the White House is trying to do, he's trying to get rid of it and dismantle it. And he does not care about it, does not care whether if it gets erased or not. And that is a problem here that needs to be addressed and fixed here. All right. It's crazy, you know. But, you know, I wish I could say more on this here, but, you know, I could tell you one thing for sure, that the White House in a post, you know, who's specifically seen to specifically target representations of Black American history and experience. This is what he wrote here. Everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Excuse me. And, you know, I'm trying to, like, you know, maintain my composure on all this, but whatever it is that he's saying is like really just nonsense and really just makes me want to just, you know, just I'm trying to keep my cool on this, but you know, so with that being said, I'm just going to leave it there. I said what I had to say on this here, so we want to know what your thoughts on this here is. And you know, and so all I could say is that, you know, I just hope the, you know, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 is not being dismantled here, but you know, because you know, every African American had the right to was trying to have the fight to or the right to vote back in the days, and that's what the guy in the White House is trying to do. Is he's trying to get rid of African Americans giving the right to vote, and he's also trying to dismantle African American history here, which is not good at all. So, you know, we'll just keep you updated and see what he does next here. Okay?